Certain individuals carried out specific actions, as Congresswoman Ilhan Omar famously phrased it when referring to the tragedy of September 11, 2001, the most devastating terror attack on American soil. Nearly 3,000 American citizens lost their lives, with firefighters charging into scorching skyscrapers and individuals forced to leap from windows 100 stories high. The Pentagon was engulfed in flames, while a Pennsylvania field became the final resting place for passengers who resisted their captors, all because certain individuals performed specific actions. On January 23, 2026, the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing chamber was filled to capacity with the press gallery documenting every moment under the glow of recording lights. The placard displaying the hearing's subject read, "Combating Anti-Semitism and Bias Crimes in America," setting a serious tone for the proceedings. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana sat at the dais, deliberately adjusting his spectacles as he gazed downward at the dossier piled high upon his desk. The stack included immigration paperwork, campaign financial disclosures, divorce records, and tax filings, all containing unsettling discrepancies and summaries of federal inquiries. Across from him sat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, wearing a confident expression, believing she had been summoned to discuss Islamophobia and the victimization of Muslims. She had prepared statements regarding hate crimes targeting her community, but Kennedy looked up with a Louisiana drawl that emerged slow, soft, seemingly amiable, yet concealing a sharp edge. "Congresswoman Omar, I value your presence here today," he said with a smile that failed to reach his eyes, noting he had some inquiries for her. These were straightforward questions, the sort folks asked back in Louisiana when attempting to discern if someone was being forthright with them. He opened the initial binder, suggesting they begin with her family history, causing Omar's smile to diminish ever so slightly. Her legal counsel leaned in to whisper a pressing message, realizing this session was not about Islamophobia, but was instead evolving into a rigorous examination. Kennedy bypassed the usual pleasantries and did not ease into the topic, simply opening the file to state that in 2009 she married a man named Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi. Omar adjusted her position in the chair, attempting to steer the conversation toward the rising tide of intolerance, but Kennedy cut in with a polite persistence. "I am merely inquiring about your marital history, which is a matter of public record, asking specifically if you wed Mr. Elmi on February 12, 2009. The room fell into a hush as cameras zoomed in and the audience leaned forward, waiting for her confirmation, which came with a caveat about allegations. Kennedy thanked her and retrieved another document, placing it down with care before addressing serious claims that Mr. Elmi is actually her biological sibling. The sound of camera shutters clicking rapidly filled the air like a burst of static, while Omar's expression solidified and she denounced the claims as repulsive falsehoods. Kennedy raised a hand in a gesture of patience, clarifying that he did not ask if the claims were repulsive, but rather if they were factual. He posed the simple question of whether Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi was her brother, waiting through a heavy silence before she answered in the negative. He then asked if she could supply documentation such as birth certificates or DNA tests to substantiate that denial. Omar explained that the civil conflict in Somalia had destroyed the infrastructure and made records unavailable, a point Kennedy acknowledged he understood. However, he noted that she became a United States citizen in 2000, requiring proof of identity then, meaning she had over 2 decades to compile evidence. He asked if she could prove Mr. Elmi was not her brother, and after a look from her lawyer, she stated she had already addressed these baseless accusations. Kennedy remarked that denying them was distinct from disproving them, his voice remaining level and rational, yet undeniably intense. He produced another document, reading from her divorce filing of December 2017, where she stated under oath that she had no contact with Mr. Elmi since 2011. He looked over his glasses to emphasize that testifying to no contact for 6 years was a sworn statement, and he asked if that was her testimony. She confirmed that the filing stated as much, but Kennedy revealed printed screenshots from social media, laying them out like playing cards on the table. "We possess photographs and location data placing you and Mr. Elmi at the identical locations in 2014, 2015, and 2016. He slid the images toward her, asking for an explanation given her testimony of no contact since 2011, noting that one of these claims must be untrue. Omar refused to answer questions regarding unverified images, but Kennedy countered that they were from Elmi's own accounts with timestamps. He asked if she was in contact with him between 2011 and 2017, causing her lawyer to lean in urgently while her hand trembled, reaching for water. She stated she would not answer questions that could be interpreted as evidence of perjury, to which Kennedy tilted his head with that consistent, polite smile. Lying under oath during divorce proceedings constitutes perjury, which is a felony, and he asked if she was refusing to answer to avoid self-incrimination. Chairman Durbin reached for his gavel, suggesting they were drifting from the hearing's topic, but Kennedy insisted he was establishing credibility. If she lied under oath regarding her marriage, Kennedy argued, the committee had little reason to trust her testimony on other matters. Durbin grimaced, but allowed him to proceed, so Kennedy turned back to Omar to simplify the matter with yes or no questions. He asked if Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi was her brother, and, upon her denial, asked if she would release immigration records or take a DNA test to prove it. She cited legal counsel in her refusal, calling the line of questioning harassment, while Kennedy noted that innocent individuals usually desire to clear their names. He transitioned to her finances, noting she filed joint federal tax returns with Ahmed Hirsi in 2014 and 2015. Omar deferred to her tax history, but Kennedy pointed out that the Campaign Finance Board found she filed jointly with Mr. Hirsi while legally married to Mr. Elmi. He explained that filing joint returns with someone one is not married to constitutes fraud, and doing so while married to another man who might be a sibling is a crime spree. Omar attempted to respond, but found no words, while her lawyer whispered that she did not need to answer politically motivated inquiries. Kennedy mentioned that the border czar had confirmed an active investigation by Homeland Security into immigration fraud occurring at that very moment. He placed all the documents down and asked why, if America is such a terrible and unjust place, she committed fraud to remain there. The room erupted with noise until Durbin banged his gavel, leaving Omar frozen, while Kennedy waited patiently for an answer that did not come. Shifting topics, Kennedy brought up the reason for her presence, which was anti-Semitism, and produced a stack of tweets and resolutions. He noted she had been removed from the Foreign Affairs Committee and condemned by the House, to which she replied that criticizing policy is not hate speech. Kennedy interrupted gently to clarify he was discussing anti-Semitism, displaying a 2012 tweet where she wrote that Israel had hypnotized the world. He explained that the concept of hypnosis is an ancient trope depicting Jewish people as manipulators with secret powers of control. Omar claimed she was young and unaware, but Kennedy pointed out she was 30 years old and had lived in America for 15 years at the time. He then displayed a 2019 tweet regarding political support, where she famously wrote that it was all about the specific currency known as Benjamins. Kennedy interpreted this as an assertion that Jewish people purchase political influence, which constitutes anti-Semitism, despite her claim it referred to lobbying expenditures. He maintained his calm demeanor, stating that the idea of Jewish money controlling governments is a historical smear known as a blood libel. He noted she later named specific organizations, reinforcing the conspiracy theory of Jewish control, before apologizing and claiming she was learning. Kennedy questioned how she was just learning this at age 36, after decades on Earth and being elected to Congress. He stated people doubt her apologies because the behavior continues, citing an event where she suggested Americans pushed for allegiance to a foreign entity. This implied that Jewish Americans possess dual loyalty, a sentiment condemned even by leadership within her own party. Kennedy then produced a document from June 2021 where she equated the United States and Israel with groups like Hamas and the Taliban. He emphasized that she placed her own nation in the same category as terrorist organizations, though she argued she was calling for accountability. Kennedy reminded her that Hamas had committed atrocities involving the murder and burning of families, asking if she truly viewed America as equivalent to that. She insisted her statement was about international justice mechanisms, but Kennedy argued that no context makes comparing the U.S. to murderous terrorists acceptable. Moving to April 2024, he brought up her visit to Columbia University, where she stood with protesters and commented on Jewish students. He read her quote stating that bigotry shouldn't be tolerated for any Jewish students, whether they are pro-genocide or anti-genocide. Kennedy questioned her labeling of students who support Israel's right to self-defense as pro-genocide, noting these students might have lost family in the Holocaust. She claimed the comment was taken out of context, but Kennedy challenged her to explain what context makes such a label acceptable. When she remained silent, he asserted that calling Jewish people genocidal is a form of blood libel and clear anti-Semitism. He displayed a House resolution detailing her documented history of hateful comments and conspiracy theories, noting a pattern stretching over a decade. Kennedy observed that her condemnations of anti-Semitism only come after she has committed it, characterizing this as damage control rather than genuine remorse. He asked how many times one is permitted to apologize for the same offense before losing credibility, answering his own question by saying she was out of chances. Every major Jewish organization and her own colleagues recognize the pattern, though some remain silent for political reasons. Kennedy expressed sadness that despite the Jewish community welcoming her and trying to educate her, she repaid them with continued slurs. As a refugee, she should understand persecution. Yet, she mocks the pain of a people who have faced displacement and genocide throughout history. Kennedy cited a statement that she has a specific problem with Jewish people, noting her lack of outrage regarding human rights abuses in China or Iran. He challenged her to show one instance of her condemning Hamas or Hezbollah with the same fervor, attributing her silence to an obsession with Jews. Kennedy then returned to the phrase, "Some people did something," asking if that was how she described events she wished to avoid discussing. He reminded her of the September 11th attacks, asking where she was and confirming she was safe in America while thousands were murdered. He read a transcript from 2019 where she stated an organization was founded because they recognized that some people did something and civil liberties were being lost. The room went silent as Kennedy repeated the phrase, contrasting it with the reality of 19 terrorists hijacking planes and killing nearly 3,000 people. He described the heroism of first responders and the horror of the victims, questioning how she could reduce that to "some people did something." She argued the comment was about Muslim civil liberties, but Kennedy asserted she was dismissing the murders as if they were a minor inconvenience. He displayed photos of victims like Wells Crowther and Stephen Siller, heroes who died saving others, and insisted she look at them. Kennedy accused her of making herself the victim and centering the tragedy on Muslim civil liberties rather than the actual loss of American life. He pointed out that her claim about the organization's founding date was factually incorrect, meaning she used a false narrative to claim victimhood. He held up a photo of Nicholas Harros Jr., who lost his mother in the towers and had publicly shamed Omar for her dismissive language. Kennedy repeated the words, "Shame on you," with reverence for the victim's son, condemning her for minimizing a mass murder. He listed the restraint America showed after the attacks, protecting mosques and refusing to punish the wider Muslim community, contrasting it with her rhetoric. He criticized her political group for turning every tragedy into a grievance about themselves, whether it was police actions or foreign conflicts. He noted she used her privilege to fly to universities and support protesters calling for the destruction of Israel and creating exclusion zones. Kennedy stated that while protesters have rights, her support for those calling for the elimination of a state is not protest but hatred. He asserted that she does not speak for the millions of patriotic Muslims in America, but rather for a radical fringe. Shifting to finances, he produced records showing her campaign paid her lover's consulting firm $250,000 in just 8 months. Kennedy revealed divorce filings where the consultant's wife stated her husband admitted to an affair with Omar, coinciding with the payments. He pointed out that donor money was used to fund travel expenses for an affair, characterizing it as a betrayal of her supporters. Despite her denial, Kennedy noted the payments began the same month the affair was confessed, calling it evidence of using funds for personal expenses. He emphasized the scale of the money, enough to buy a house or pay tuition, and labeled the misuse of funds as stealing. He then highlighted her net worth increasing dramatically in 1 year, asking how a civil servant accumulates millions so quickly. He questioned the sudden removal of officer names from her husband's venture capital firm website just as investigations began, calling it suspicious. Kennedy reviewed her history of campaign finance violations, painting a picture of someone who takes money that does not belong to them. He accused her of betraying the country that gave her refuge by enriching herself, then moved to the massive welfare fraud in her district. He detailed a $250 million theft, where fraudsters claimed to feed non-existent children to steal taxpayer money. He noted she supported the legislation that removed oversight, making the theft possible, and had later defended the outcome. Kennedy pointed out that the money bought luxury cars instead of food, yet she had expressed no regret, claiming it helped feed kids. He demanded she show the numbers proving real children were fed, noting she could not, because the recipients were fabricated. He described the fake invoices and empty feeding sites, highlighting that her support for removing oversight enabled the crime. Kennedy concluded by stating that stealing food from children is not just corrupt, but evil, especially for someone who knows hunger. He ended the inquiry by asking why, if the nation is so cruel, individuals commit fraud to remain, and why she appeared proud of enabling the largest welfare theft in the state's history.